G'day West Coast Eagles fans, and welcome back to True Eagle for a much better mood of video, I think, this week, following a 3-goal loss to the Brisbane Lions on Sunday morning Perth time. The game started quite early, and thankfully the game went a lot better than expected, and certainly went a lot better than how it went the previous week against Gold Coast, which was unexpected, no doubt. You know, social media was going wild as the Eagles increased their lead in the first half. Ultimately, we were undone, but I don't know about you guys. Again, this is a day after the fact now. But even, immediately after the game, I think the prevailing emotion that I felt, if you can call it one, is probably relief. Not so much excitement. I think we're probably past the point of believing that every time we play well, it's going to continue. But for me, there was a sense of relief, like, oh, okay, cool. This that side that we saw limp out in round one and get absolutely butchered in every facet of the game, that is not necessarily a true reflection of our talent. I would argue we played well below our ability against the Gold Coast Suns, and to some extent we weren't allowed to play anywhere near our ability. I do think the Gold Coast Suns are a pretty good side, actually, but to demonstrate what we did, particularly, for 3 quarters, really, we were still in front at 3-quarter time against the Brisbane Lions. Very, very pleased, to be honest. And like I said, rather than it being excitement and as though I'm extrapolating this into the future and what we can expect week in, week out, I'm not expecting us to do that every week, but there was a sense of relief that, oh, good, there is a half-decent side who can play well still underneath, and that's allowed me to relax a little bit going forward. So we haven't necessarily started the year in diabolical form. I think week 2 certainly lifted my spirits from that point of view. The other pleasing thing about it, and we'll get into the game more specifically, but the other pleasing thing about it was just the even contribution between young and old in this game. I remember certain games last year, maybe you could say this for all of our wins, with the exception of, Harley Reed going ballistic early in the year last year, but a lot of those wins, particularly the late ones, were on the back of our senior players lifting in, sort of offering what we kind of hoped they would offer week in, week out, and playing really well, namely the Gold Coast game and to some extent North Melbourne last year. But this one, we had young and old playing well, which was great. Jamie Cripps was enormous in that first half. I think Oscar Allen was also pretty good in that first half. I'll elaborate on what I mean by that, because some people weren't happy with his performance. Kelly played a lot better than last week. Liam Baker is a senior player now, but there was also Tyrell Dewar playing his best game of the year. I don't know if the Rising Star nomination has come out yet, but he should be a good chance. Clay Hall played his best game, getting 7 clearances as a late in. Who else played well? Ryan Marrick had 26 posies. Broadly speaking, the even contribution across the team was probably the best I've seen in an Eagles game for some time. So that's another reason for optimism here. So yes, the game starts, and obviously we get a few quick goals, and social media is ablaze when we're 3 goals up. That's how far we were off from being favourites in this game. We kicked the first 3 goals, and it's already blowing up. Well, that became 5 goals. And, I don't think at any point I really got too excited that we might win, but it was great to see us playing well. And not only were we playing well and hitting the scoreboard, I just think we were outrunning and out hunting them and playing a brand that, we were advertised as the way we're going to play in season 2025. We were able to really play the game on our terms. And one thing I noticed throughout that first half, and maybe you can say the whole game, but particularly in the first half, is we were able to make Brisbane look a little bit rattled. So we're making uncharacteristic mistakes, dewy conditions. Both teams were a little sloppy, but Brisbane weren't all over us with any degree of confidence. And in fact, they looked a little bit timid at times. And that's great for such a great team that the Brisbane Lions are. The fact we were able to hem them in massively and play the game on our terms, that's a huge tick. So I know not everyone is up for honourable losses or anything like that, but in context, to see that for 3 quarters, I would even say we ran out the game okay, to be honest. Like, things went against us late in the game, which we can touch on, but, with not long left, we were still half a chance of winning that game. So, yeah, I'd say the overwhelming feeling was relief. Relief that maybe this season won't be as diabolical as it looked, 7 days ago, to be honest. So Tyrell Dewar's talent it's fantastic. It's always been good, but I think his rate of improvement is so satisfying because he was a Cat B rookie. I've probably talked about him before on this channel, but to go from a Cat B rookie who was playing Waffle Eagles in his first year in the injury crisis and playing alongside Jordan Baker as the only listed Eagle who was also a Cat B rookie, to actually improve over the course of that year, I think is impressive. Like, those are not conditions conducive to a player who is raw and talented, but raw and underdeveloped, improving. To then debut in his second year, I reckon, last year was his second year, and play some really good footy towards the back end of the year and hold his spot, and then, probably be close to the best Eagle on ground against the Brisbane Lions. That rate of improvement it's very impressive, and you can tell he's built his tank. He's playing a little bit higher up the ground now, even in defence in round one. So we've got an absolute beauty there. As far as talent goes, like, I don't think there's too much of a gap between guys like Hewitt and Jinby and Tyrell Dewar. I think he's up there with them in terms of raw ability, and the fact that we're now seeing him get a little bit more of the footy by himself, that's impressive. That's very impressive. Probably the biggest win from the day if you had to isolate one player. One variable that was pretty instrumental to us playing well early, I thought, was Bailey Williams. I think he deserves a lot of credit. I think before he went off, I believe he was edging McInerney in the hitouts, and that's got to be pretty rare that the Eagles win a hitout count ever. I'm not sure where it ended up. Naturally, he went off with an injury, and that's really unfortunate. He went off with cramp. They described it as cramp. McQualter doubled down saying it was cramp in the press conference, but, I'm no doctor, but strapping it seemed like a weird way to deal with that. So hopefully he gets up. But I thought he deserves some credit for his taps and his follow-up in particular, and I think that really helped us, gain the ascendancy early, and I think we were plus 20 or something for contested balls in the first half. Brisbane did edge us in the end. They beat us by one contested possession, but generally speaking, I think that those are pretty good numbers. The uncontested marks was pretty insane. I think Brisbane had about 148, but there was a lot of chipping around and not a lot of intent, with the Brisbane Lions ball movement for, let's call it 2.5 quarters maybe. Naturally, they won the game, don't get me wrong, but I'm not too concerned by those numbers in particular. Our strategy with the forward line was interesting. So naturally, Waterman was out. So we played Bailey Williams and Archer Reed in the ruck, and just Oscar Allen as the sole key forward. And one thing that was evident to me was he was playing as a key defender in his own forward line and playing a very unselfish role. And in that second, it might have even been the first quarter, I thought he actually impacted the contest really well. By half time, I think Harris Andrews had barely impacted the contest at all. That changed massively. Harris Andrews started getting his hands on the footy, and that is ultimately, one of the kickstarters that allowed Brisbane to get back on top in that game. But I will also acknowledge that Oscar had some moments that were very questionable. I think he was involved in that fluffed kick in the third when we missed a bunch in a row. There was once or twice he started leaping when I swear the ball was still in our back half. So there are a few mistakes there from Oscar, but I think we should acknowledge it wasn't his usual role that he played in that game. Liam Baker's getting a lot of plaudits for this game. I would agree with that. Probably leading our best and fairest at the moment. I would give Tom Cole some credits. Brady Hoff was also really good. Brady Hoff had a few moments in this game that irked me, but he's a gun, so I'll let him off the hook a bit. It was pleasing to see Hewitt work his way into the game as well. More possessions this week. Again, his touch is a little bit off, but he had some good moments, and I would describe that as genuine progress from last week. So slow and steady for Hewitt. He's coming from a bit of a way back, but still able to impact the contest. And Clay Hall coming in as a late in the absence of Jack Graham. When I saw that, I was like, oh my God, we don't have Yo, we don't have Waterman, but Graham also out of that midfield mix for a team that got annihilated last week. I was nervous about that, but Clay Hall had seven clearances, which I think was up there with any Eagle in that game. Without double checking the stats, I don't think too many players got more than 7. He might have even had the most. But yeah, stunning first half. Skipped out to a 4-goal lead, held that lead at half time. And in the third quarter, that was obviously where the game started to shift. Now, the thing that was frustrating about it, sure, Brisbane had a lot more of the ball, a lot more inside 50s, and maybe a few more shots at goal, but we kicked 1 goal 6, and the annoying thing about it is just that there was some bad luck involved in that, and some skill errors as well, particularly as we got increasingly tired throughout the game. So a few of those misses that come to mind, there was about 3 handballs. I think Hewitt handballed it to Long, who handballed it to Allen, who missed from the goal square, something like that. But then there was Archer, who had a set shot, touched on the line. I think there was another one touched on the line. And was it Liam Ryan who had a shot and it bounced basically on the goal line and at 45 degrees and hit the post? So a little bit of bad luck there, but I do wonder, if 2 or 3 of those had gone in, we go into three-quarter time with the same lead we would have had at halftime. And, maybe that could have saved us. In the end, that's just bad luck. And Brisbane overran us, no doubt. But, with a bit of better luck, we could have won that game. And that's all I'm saying is that's really encouraging. There's been games where we've won in the past, particularly against North Melbourne a couple of times, where things really went our way and we won. In this game, we played well enough we would have been worthy winners had we just been able to run out the game a little bit more. There was nothing fluky about what we did, and I suppose I am comforted by that fact. Liam Ryan was also one of the best Eagles on the field and deserves a shout out. So, like I said, it's a very even team performance, I thought, and probably too hard to name all the individuals who played well. But like I summed up, it was pleasing to see the even spread between young and old, and a lot of the younger guys having their best games of their career. So, yeah, that's really pleasing, to be honest, after a tough week for Eagles fans. I don't know about you guys, but I spent the week thinking, oh, God, when's this Eagles game again? Oh, Sunday, can't wait to watch that. I'm always excited for Eagles games, but you know what I mean. There was a sense of not really wanting to think too hard about footy this week. But we've got the Derby now, so that will be interesting. And I will do a preview later this week and talk about that a bit more intently. Do I think we're a shot this far out? Well, I think the last time we beat Fremantle, Yo played a blinder, won the medal. Waterman kicked 5, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, Harley obviously went nuts. But 2 of those players are not going to be playing. I don't think Waterman's going to get up for this game. On the other hand, I think if we play like we did against Brisbane, against Fremantle, absolutely we can win. And we did that without Yo and Waterman to begin with. So I'll just leave it as that. I'm not writing us off at this point, but we'll see. I'll do another video later this week. I'm sick of talking about Harley Reed, but we might as well because he's still such a big part of the media swirl right now, which annoys me in itself. So let's discuss his performance. First of all, his performance was okay. He gave away a few free kicks, which was frustrating. Did some dumb things, absolutely. But his performance was fine without being great. I think probably Elijah played better, to be honest. But Elijah's a year older, and we just need to remember that with Harley. So performance, not a big issue for me. I think he did some good things. Last week I defended him a little bit, and I was more commenting on the media narrative and how I felt that perhaps Harley had become alienated amongst his own fan base because there might be a bit of a sense that he's leaving us, right? I did not mean to say that any criticism of the way Harley conducts himself on field is therefore unwarranted. That's completely fine. I have defended him, but I do think there were some things in this game that absolutely are worth some criticism. So specifically, I think I kind of got annoyed at him at one point where we were sort of, trailing by a couple of goals late in the game, still absolutely in it. And Harley wins a free kick on the wing and the Eagles are streaming past. And instead of going to pick up the ball, Harley goes and shoves the guy who gives him the free kick. And that is just a clear example of something you should not do. And that pissed me off. And what I think the result was, if I'm not mistaken, he walked back and the whole field had set up and we'd lost that run. So that was a bad, blip for him, absolutely. That obviously speaks to some frustration. There was also a moment in the Gold Coast game where he had a bit of a dive, and I saw it on the big screen. And I thought, oh, God, that looks bad. So again, if you're criticizing those things, I'm not going to talk you out of that. That is completely fine. I was more speaking broadly about maybe this sense of alienation of one of our players. I don't really like to think like that, but let's be specific about what issues we're talking about. Now, when he flipped the bird at the crowd, I will actually defend Harley for that because the treatment he gets is absolutely absurd. I know he doesn't help himself, with his bravado and his showmanship, and we're not playing well. That's not going to be taken well. But I think it is only a human thing when you have Brisbane fans saying whatever the hell they were saying to him. I can't imagine it was too complimentary. And the booing, I think the booing of him is getting a little bit out of hand. Again, I know that me saying that is not going to change anything, but what I mean is I don't really blame him for flipping the bird to those specific Brisbane fans over the fence that were having a crack at him. Will he get fined? Yes. Should he get fined? Probably. But to me, that does not bother me in anywhere near as much as him, doing things that are stupid in terms of actual football. For example, that free kick where he should have just gone and picked up the ball and moved the ball quickly. So on the one hand, I am criticizing some of the things he's doing, but at the same time, if he wanted to flip the bird and cop the fine, whatever. It's not like he flipped off a kid, right? Presumably. I'm sure that would have come out by now. But the media reaction to it and the amount of times that I'd seen, so many articles and clips hyper-focusing on Harley Reed, his performance, and drumming up the criticism, it does incite anger in people. And to be honest, I'm more actually referring to opposition fans when I see that. The abuse this kid cops. I don't know, maybe there's a part of me that kind of wishes we'd go into bat for him a little bit more. I don't know. I guess the way I see it, which is just individual to me, and maybe other people share this and other people think about football way differently. But when we've got a player like that who is divisive and is getting negative attention, I kind of think of it, even though I don't know Harley at all, as someone who's a friend of mine or like a cousin or even a sibling or whatever, where I can separate the fact that what they're doing is not great, and I can understand why other people don't like them, but as soon as other people abuse them, I'm going to go in and bat for them. That is kind of how I feel about our football players. I felt the same way about Gaff. Although, to be fair, I don't think I really defended Andrew Gaff, with the Brayshaw incident, but what I mean is the feeling that I had, it was like, a good friend of mine had done something terrible and I'm feeling bad for him, but also not condoning what he did. Maybe that's a bad comparison, but it was an example of the way I feel in my relationship towards our players. I do think some of the abusive stuff is really over the top. I do also very strongly feel that Harley does need to pull his head in a little bit, but he's also a kid. Anyway, I've talked way too much about Harley Reed, but he flipped the bird, so it kind of had to be spoken about. But anyway, Eagles fans, let me know what you thought. I've chatted to a bunch of Eagles fans today and read reactions online, but I'd like to hear from you guys specifically. What did you make of the game? Like I said, for me, the feeling isn't excitement. Oh, good, we're a good team now. It's relief that there is still something to be worked with there. I sure as hell don't expect us to pull that out 23 times a year. No team plays at their best 23 times a year. But the confidence that we can take from that is something, certainly as fans. And you could see it in the game as well. I felt like we were taking a few more risks and they were paying off as well. Whether there would be difficult kicks inboard. We looked a little bit less scared to make mistakes as well as the game wore on. We certainly did make a lot of more mistakes in the second half. But I just thought that confidence was pretty palpable. We could really see it on field, and hopefully we can take that going forward. And once again, we played really well without some of our most important players, you would argue. And, all teams need to play well without their best players on the park. But for a team with our list profile, we do rely very heavily on guys like Elliot Yeo, particularly in that midfield. And Jake Waterman might be our best player outside of McGovern or whatever your opinion is on that. But we do rely heavily on our best players, and to perform like that without a bunch of them, massive tick for me. So I'm happy with it. But obviously that can be completely eradicated if we have another terrible run of performances. So fingers crossed, they get a tick from me this week. But let me know in the comments what you think, guys. And I'll see you later in the week for a Derby preview. Cheers.